In this video, we're looking at the OCR Programming Techniques Question 3. I'm just going to walk you through the answers and just the logic that I would take for answering this question. So the first question is 3a. The following algorithm prints out the times table of the number entered using a count-controlled loop. So we all know how timetables work. It will usually start with you pick the number that you want to know. So let's say, for example, the 2 times table. So that would be my input. So input B would be 2, for example. I want to know my 2 times table. And for x equals 1 to 100, print b times x. So now we've got a count-controlled loop, which is a for loop. And x is just a variable that keeps count. And x is going to start at 1, and it's going to keep incrementing until 100. So what's going to happen here is x is going to start at 1, and my b is 2, so it's going to do 2 times 1, 2 times 2, 2 times 3, 2 times 4, 2 times 5, 2 times 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, all the way up until 100. And what I should see is I should see the answers of my 2 times table printed out from 2 times 1 to 2 times 100. Now this is pseudocode, so it actually might just be 2 times 1 to 2 times 99. And again, it's just going to show you the answer. So just going through the structure here, this is an input, and as you can see, it's just using pseudocode, so we don't have assignment operators, whereas this could also be written as b equals input, enter your times table, for example. Now we're being asked to rewrite the algorithm to produce the same result using a condition-controlled loop. Now this bit here, the same results, that's really important because at the moment I'm using a count-controlled loop for 1 to 100, so I need to use a condition-controlled loop, but it needs to do the exact same thing. So what I've done, just to help you visualize this, is I've programmed it up, and we've got b equals in input, enter the times table you would like to see, and for x in range 1 to 100, print b times x. Okay, pretty much exactly the same as our pseudocode here, just adding a little bit of syntax. So what I would expect to see here, and let's use as an example, enter your times table, what would you like to see? So I'm going to enter a value that's assigned to b, so I'm going to enter 10, nice and easy. So it should go, my answer should start with 1, and it should go 1 times 10 would be 10, 2 times 10 would be 20, all the way up to 100 times 10, which would be 1000. So let's see if that works. 10, 20, 30, 40, all the way up to 1000. It goes up to 990, and that's because what actually happens is with a count-controlled loop, it gets to 99, and when it hits 100, it stops. When it hits the end of that range, it actually stops. So I need to create a while loop or a condition-controlled loop that does the exact same thing. So before I show you how that works, let's take a look at what are some of the actual criteria it's looking for. So we're going to get a mark for repeating the input b line as in line 1. So in the code that you're going to be writing, we're going to have input b, exact same thing. We're inputting the times table we're interested in. We're then going to initialize a variable to use a counter. Initialize a variable to use as a counter. So when we're using while loop, obviously in a for loop, the for increments this. It means that x is going to go from 1 to 100, but that's not going to happen in a while loop, so we need to initialize a variable to use a counter. We also need to correct use of a condition-controlled loop, e.g. while, with the counter being either or less than or equal to 99 or less than or equal to 100. Now, either could be correct here because technically this is going to go up to x times 99 because the for loop will stop at 99, but it's giving you a little bit of leeway here as it is pseudocode. And then the final criteria are looking at repeating the print b times x line as in 3, so this is going to be the same, and manually incrementing the counter. So here we're introducing a counter, and here we're manually incrementing the counter. So how's this going to work? Because in a for loop, x automatically increments. That's what it's talking about. When x goes from 1 to 100, it's incrementing. It's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, up until 100. And that means x here, which is a variable holding this value, is going to go b times 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this all happens automatically in a count controlled loop, but if I change it to a condition controlled loop, first I need a condition, and I need to increment that counter. So let's see how that's going to work. Well, first of all, my input stays the same, because I'm going to allow the user to input that number. And in line 2, I would go x equals 1. So that's kind of taking this part out of the for loop and just initializing it here, because when we start our times table, we start with whatever the number that we're looking at, times 1, then it's going to be times 2. So now we need to use the correct condition controlled. So we want this code here to repeat while x is less than or equal to 100. And that's going to look like this, while x is less than or equal to 100. And notice here it says repeating line 3, so this line stays exactly the same. So while x is less than or equal to 100, I'm going to print b times x. Now, if I left my code here, what would happen is I'd input whatever number I wanted there, so let's say 10. X would be equal to 1. So while x is less than or equal to 100, well, x is less than, because it's only 1, we're going to print b times x. So b we said was 10, x we said is 1, so it will print 10. And it will go back again, and x won't have changed, so it will print 10, and print 10, and print 10. And this will just be infinite because x isn't changing. So that's where we have to manually increment the counter variable. And how we do that is by simply adding 1 to x every time this iterates. So now x is going to equal x plus 1. So on the first iteration, x is 1. Then x, which is 1 plus 1, is going to be 2. So now x is 2. Then 3, then 4, then 5, then 6. And once it gets to 99, it'll repeat one more time, and then 100, this changes, and we exit our loop. And then, as this is pseudocode, we also want to just say end while loop as well. If you take a look here for the for loop, it says next, and actually what you do is next x, because that's the variable there. So this is how we can technically write any count-controlled loop using a condition-controlled loop. It just means that we have to manually increment this. And this is really useful times where I want to repeat a piece of code a set number of times, but I don't really know how many, so I can just increment it this way using condition. And what we're going to do is we're just going to check how that works. I'm going to use the same example 10. Remember, this was my for loop. So here we've got very similar code. This is my while loop, so I've got b, I've got x, which I set to 1, while x is less than or equal to 100, print b times x, x equals x plus 1. And let's run this and see what happens. And I would expect to see the same results as here. So let's run it. And it says enter the timetable you'd like to see. So I'm going to use 10 as my example again. So I'm expecting to see the numbers 10 going up by 10 to 990. Looks like it's working. And great, so we got to 1000. So just slightly different, because here what I said was less than or equal to. If I get rid of that equal sign, it'll just go up to 990. Okay, so in this question we need to know how count-controlled loops work, and what's really important is we need to know how this here, which is just a variable, and sometimes you might see that written as I, you might see that written as count, and again, it's just a variable that will increment for the range, and that variable here can then be used within my actual for loop code to hold the same value. So let's take a look at the next question. So we're still on the theme of loops, and we want to write an algorithm that will ask the user for their age in years. So kind of gives you a hint. If we're asking for the age in years, we actually are asking for the age as an integer. It's going to be a whole number. And then print the message, happy birthday, that many times. So for example, if you're 10 years old, it's going to print happy birthday 10 times. If you're 20 years old, it will print happy birthday 20 times. So let's take a look at what we're going to get some marks for. We're going to get marked for inputting the age from the user. So that's a really, really, really nice and easy mark. And if you've noticed, we pretty much had that in all the questions so far. And here again, we've got those keywords, ask the user for their age, and just abstract it straight out of the question. Use age as your variable. Ask the user. That means it's going to be an input. And then print the message, happy birthday, that many times. So that many times, we don't know how many times yet. Well, let's see how that's going to work. We're going to repeat it this many times and print out happy birthday. Now, we've just seen that we could actually do this with a for loop or a while loop. And where it's giving you marks, it doesn't actually specify which. So let's just take a look how we're going to do it in our example. Well, the first line of code, which you're going to get 1 mark for, is by simply saying input age. Now again, you can write this out as age equals input, and you can put a message there, enter your age. And my preference is to do it this way, because it just is a bit more structured like code. You've got your assignment operator. If you want to be really, really meticulous, you can also put that it's going to be an int, because you're being very specific that it's going to be a whole number. But I'm just trying to show you the basics here. So let's keep it as input age. Keep it as input age for now. Now, once we've input the age, we need to start repeating something. So we're going to repeat, and we're going to use a count controlled loop. And what we can do here is for, which starts a count controlled loop, x, which as we discussed before is a variable. And if you're still struggling with the for loops, take a look at my other videos which look at count controlled loops. So for x, which is a variable, and that variable is going to start from 1 to age. We don't know what age is yet. Age is just simply a value that's held inside a variable that's been input by the user. Now we want to go inside our for loop, because it's going to repeat the code that's indented, and it's going to repeat print happy birthday for as many times as the user is old. And that's pretty much all the code you need. And then, because it's pseudocode, we can put next x, and next x just kind of indicates that this is going to iterate from 1 until the age. Now, you might also just see this written as for x equals age, or you might see it as for x in range age. And that simply means that x is going to start at 0, and it's just going to repeat up until age. So let's take a look at what that would actually do if it was a real program. So I can get rid of that from before. And I can get rid of my example, and here we go. So age equals int input, enter your age. So I've made it an integer because it's a whole number. And for I in range age. And so slightly different to how it was written before. I is going to start at 0, and it's going to stop at however old the user's age is. And we're going to print happy birthday. So if we run this code, let's take a look at what happens. Oop, invalid syntax. I should always test my programs before the videos. And let's run. So enter your age. Well, my age is, I'm going to say 10. And so I'd expect it to wish me happy birthday 10 times. So let's see if that works. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Fantastic. So my program worked. Let's just check if it works with a different age. So let's say you're taking GCSEs, you've just had your 16th birthday, and there you go. You get a couple more extra happy birthdays. And there's just one thing I'm going to show you here, which I find is always useful if you're still struggling to understand how I works. Remember, when it's a for loop, it's a count control, so I increments automatically. And if I actually show you here what's going to happen to I, I'm just going to print I. Just simply print I. and what's actually happening to it. So if I go 12, I is going to start at 0 and it's going to increment up to 11, which if we actually count it, means that this code has repeated 12 times. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. A bit confusing because obviously it's only gone up to 11, but remember it started at 0. Okay, that's it for question 3. We're just looking over condition and count controlled loops at a very basic level, and they're really, really, really important because pretty much every single algorithm question is going to contain some version of iteration in it, and it's really important that you can read it, you can interpret how it's going to be run.